As far as what inspires me for ideas for videos and performances, my work really has like pretty literal subject matter oftentimes, so I'll be inspired by things in the world, texts. Most recently I was reading these Victorian gardening advice columns, and that was the inspiration for a new dance film, kind of like a satire. Yeah, I think my favorite part of the creative process is probably working with other people. Filmmaking is like such a collaborative medium, especially for me, so I love bringing people's expertise together. That's kind of what part of, casting or part of the producing process is, finding the perfect costume designer who has your style, the dancers whose choreography you love, the musicians who can make a score for you, the lighting designer who has like such an interesting view of how light can change stories. So, and then when all those people are together and you're creating and all these bodies are in a space, it's really fantastic. For me, music is probably the easiest part of the creative process. Oftentimes I'll start with music. So, is it difficult? No. My life is like really meshed in music. My partner is an amazing musician. I DJ as part of my like side hustle and creative practice. So, I mean, my living room right now has a piano, an upright bass, a xylophone, a flute, a saxophone. Like just music's everywhere for me. It's a huge part of my creative community. So, yeah, music comes easy. How I define dance, I think of dance very broadly, and that's probably because of some of the dance practitioners that I've collaborated with a lot, including Michelle Ellsworth, an amazing dancer named Madison Palfy, and Brittany Benet. All of those dancers really think about movement really broadly, and that's been true since the modern era. Pedestrian movement has become a big part of dance, so that could look like walking or doing a task. I consider all of that dance, and so I guess like the answer to that question, like how do you define dance? Anything is dance if you say it is. The same way it is for art. It's like more of a lens to view the world, in my opinion. That's how I see dance. It's a way of seeing the world through your body and through people's bodies. I think the reason I incorporate it into my art is probably, I've always been like a very physical person, and that has looked a lot of ways. Sports, like wrestling when I was a kid, and playing in very physical ways, and weightlifting, and like throughout my whole life, movement has been so important. And so I think finally over the last like half decade, I've kind of discovered that I have this way of relating to that and something to call it, which might be dance. Some of my favorite pieces I've created in the last few years are a film called The Length of Day, which was a film about my relationship to capitalism and kind of like my sadness around the fact that it's hard to imagine the end of capitalism vis-a-vis my grandparents, my maternal grandparents' history with the Communist Party in the 1940s. As far as messages that I want people to take away from my work, I'm interested in, the world can be really mundane and drab, and so I'm very interested in like a serious relationship to whimsy and alternative realities, and like just experiencing a break from this like systemic boredom that I feel like can pervade modern life. that's one thing. I'm really excited about telling stories of people who haven't been told as much. I think the history of especially cinema has been mostly told through like a rich white male gaze, and so I think that helps people relate mostly to white men. Cinema's like amazing at making you identify with people. You know, you always identify with the protagonist of a film and think like, well, I know what they're feeling, and so I think it is really important now to identify with other people and their stories. To break it down, contemporary art, that word means like what's being made now, right? Just like very simply, but it's strange because, well then, will art always be contemporary art for the rest of time? If it's always just, you know, contemporaneous, meaning what's happening now. So I think we're very bad at knowing, or maybe it's not possible to know the way people will define the present moment. You usually have to look back at an art movement to say like what were its defining features. So like modern art seems to now be like this like break from representationalism and an interest in abstraction, and maybe also the relationship between art and all of these crazy things that were happening in the world, like industrialization and like massive world wars that showed how hugely capable of destruction humans are. So like what will we think of right now, of the art being made right now? And one of the things I think about is like this weird relationship to capitalism and how we kind of don't have an alternative to capitalism at the moment. Ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, there really isn't any competing political ideology or system. And so a lot of the work is strangely like retro. So like you'll see a lot of VHS effects and archaic technology. I mean, I'm totally guilty of that. This is a VHS camera I have here. And a lot of my films have, you know, used this kind of nostalgic lens. And I think you see it a lot in music too. We're like constantly cycling back to previous like art eras. So I think it's really hard for us to imagine the future, and that's also related to global warming. We just can't really get our minds around what will become of us. And so I think that is where we are in art, basically.